Thanks for tuning in. We're in the book of Revelation, chapters 21 through 22. And this is actually a deal for the Tri-City School of Preaching and Christian Development. We've gotten through all of the 20 chapters of the book leading up to 21 and 22, and we need to cover these last two chapters. So we'll get right into it. This is chapter 21, verses 1 through 8. John sees a new heavens and a new earth, 21:1 says. For the first heaven and the first earth were passed away. And the text says, and there is no longer any sea. And John says in 21:2, and I saw the holy city, the new Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God, made ready as a bride adorned for her husband. And I heard a loud voice from the throne, saying, Behold, the tabernacle of God is among men, and he will dwell among them, and they shall be his people, and God himself will be among them. And verse 4 says, He will wipe away every tear from their eyes. There will be no longer any death. There will be no longer any mourning, crying, or pain. The first things have passed away. And verse 5 says, He who sits on the throne said, Behold, I'm making all things new. And he said, Write, for these words are faithful and true. And in 21:6, the verse says, He said to me, It is done. I am the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end. I will give to the one who thirsts from the spring of the water of life without cost. Verse 7 says, He who overcomes will inherit these things, and I will be his God, and he will be my son. And verse 8 says, But for the cowardly and unbelieving and abominable and murderers and immoral persons and sorcerers and idolaters and all liars, their part will be in the lake that burns with fire and brimstone, which is the second death. Okay, that's Revelation 21, 1 through 8. Now, I need to tell you, especially if you're tuning in and you haven't been in class with us up to chapter 20, what I'm about to say could be a little bit shocking. But let me just go ahead and throw some things out there that you should probably know. Number one, you should probably know that the worksheets that go along with this study, which is what I'm teaching from, they're available on the website. You need to go to the materials tab on cadleonard.com, cadleonard.com. You need to click the materials tab. There's going to be a drop down. You need to select worksheets. In the worksheets, you're going to get this table of various sections. You need to select the worksheets tab that is labeled Revelation, and then there you should have just this list of, and you can either find the worksheets that are blank or you can find the answer keys. All of that material is on the website. You can also get the workbook basically printed out. I mean, you could print the same material yourself on your printer if you're one of those paper guys or girls. But you could also order it through my website if you select, I think there's a bookstore tab, and then there's a drop down. You want to select the class notes section. You can buy that. You could also buy the commentary. The commentary is actually like written out, and there's some more data in there than the class notes. I mean, obviously this is pretty skeletal. The commentary is not so skeletal. It works with the entire text, every phrase, pretty heavy. So that you should know that. Now, something else you should know is this. The whole book of Revelation, chapters 1 through 22, the whole thing is a coherent and cohesive drama. You mustn't read this in the same way you would read the book of 1st or 2nd Samuel or 1st or 2nd Kings. You mustn't read this book like you read Ephesians. This is a drama. This is a movie, as you might think about it. It is one big movie, and we need to look at the different pictures or scenes, chapters, in the movie. But it's still one movie, and it's saying one big point. And so we mustn't do this. We mustn't treat Revelation 1 through 19 as being all about something back in the first century dealing with Rome, only to splice the text at chapter 20 or 21 and start talking about end of time material. The book is not to be treated that way for a trillion reasons. And the people who try to do that are very inconsistent with their hermeneutic. They have no reason other than the language itself as to why they split the book prematurely, that is. Now listen to me. The language itself might make you think. The language itself, when John talks about death and Hades giving up the dead that were in them, or when he talks about a first resurrection, that language, you might think, well, that sounds like second coming stuff. That sounds like something in our future. The only reason people think that is because of complete ignorance of the Old Testament prophets. The minute we recover the Old Testament backdrop and uncover the images and the motifs and the metaphors that are taken out of the Old Testament, that difficulty goes away. You start to see in Isaiah 13 the same kind of imagery used about the fall of Babylon. You see the same kind of imagery used in Isaiah 34 about the fall of Edom. You see the same kind of imagery used in Ezekiel 32 about the fall of Egypt. You see the same kind of imagery in Isaiah 19 about the fall of Egypt. You see the same kind of imagery used in Jeremiah 4 about the fall of Jerusalem in 586 at the hand of the Babylonians. The point I'm making is this. It is a very, very uninformed view that comes to Revelation chapters 20 and 21 and says this has to be end of time material because of the language. I'm actually saying it's exactly the opposite of that. I'm saying we ought to pump the brakes as to whether or not this is end of time material simply because that is not what the Old Testament prophets had in view when they used this same kind of metaphor or motif or language and they applied it to the national oppressor. If you've been with us in class and you've stuck with us in the context of the book, then you're hearing what I'm saying. The context of Revelation is still about the Roman oppressor, Domitian, the 8th Roman emperor, who is wearing out the saints. And that sits quite nicely with Daniel chapter 7, and it fits quite nicely as we make transposition from the Old Testament prophets into a new key of John's own day as he's talking about a new oppressor that looks like or takes on the style of the oppressor, much like Pharaoh from Egypt, Nebuchadnezzar from Babylon, etc., etc., etc. Ian Fair is right. There are over 600 echoes or allusions to the Old Testament in the book of Revelation. That's more than one per verse. We would be severely misinformed and ignorant if we did not pick those up and try to make transposition as to how John is using those. Now, let's get to Revelation chapter 21. The previous section should be understood as a judgment upon the oppressor's world. This is a question we have to ask. If you ask John, did you see a new planet and a new sky, heaven? Did you see a new heaven and a new earth coming into existence? You know what he's going to say? Absolutely. That's what 21:1 says. That is what Revelation 21:1 says. Now, let's prod a little bit further. Let's probe a little bit further. John, what did the new heavens and the new earth? You saw that in the vision, in the oracle, in the drama. Now let's ask this question. What does it mean? What does it mean? Now, there are only 4 chapters, 4 texts where the new heavens and new earth is actually talked about in Scripture. It is Isaiah 65, it is Isaiah 66, it is 2 Peter 3, and it is Revelation 21. Now, I'm going to say to you that all 3 of those texts, Isaiah 65 and 66, 2 Peter 3, and Revelation 21, are all using the same template. More on that here in a second. The former section in Revelation 20, 11 through 15, is talking about the destruction or the cataclysm upon the oppressor's world. And I've argued that the oppressor in the book of Revelation is Domitian. Now, a lot of people want to take Revelation 20, 11 through 15 and say it's talking about the end of time. I'm simply going to have to say Daniel 7 will not allow that. Daniel 7, if you read Daniel 7 responsibly, will not permit that reading. The second thing I'd have to say is it betrays the context of the book. The third thing I'd have to say is it's misinformed because people don't pick up the Old Testament imagery. Number 4, the book is handcuffed by the at-hand time statements that are locking the entire book in. It makes an inclusio argument, 1113 with 22:6 and 22:10. The whole book is within this certain context. I'm saying a number of things on 20, 11 through 15 in order to say that that is a picture of the oppressor's world, and that sits just nicely with how the Old Testament speaks about the oppressors being gutted. It fits quite nicely with Daniel 7, which is actually talking about Rome. A number of reasons that we've covered in class already. Revelation 20, 11 through 15 uses this language, but it's talking about the oppressor's world being destroyed. Did John see an old planet, an old heaven, and an old earth going out of the way? Absolutely. And guess what? That's the same kind of thing that Isaiah saw. If you look at Isaiah 13, he says, I'm talking though about the fall of Babylon. If you look at Isaiah 34, he says, I'm talking about the fall of Edom. 34:5 explicitly now. And the rest of the Old Testament has the same kind of apocalyptic speech used exactly in that way. Now, Revelation 20 then, 11 through 15, is about a judgment upon the oppressor's world. In each case, though, how do we figure out what's being talked about? It is the context. Put that in your blank on number 1. In each case, the context is the determinant of who the villain or the oppressor is. I'm not making this up. If you go back to Isaiah 13:1, the text starts out, this is the burden upon Babylon. I didn't write that. That's what 13:1 of Isaiah says, and it's a foolish, naive view that comes along and says, oh, actually, that's not what's in view. Sorry, but bless me, Isaiah 13 is from the prophet himself. Look at 34:5. He's talking about a judgment upon the land of Idumea or Edom. Edom, I think the new translation. Idumea is King James, Old King James. Same meaning. Edom. Edom's the oppressor. You look at Ezekiel 32, it's Egypt. And the list goes on. Joel 2, it's either Assyria or Babylon coming up on the city of Jerusalem. Probably the 586 one, I would think. I'd think it's Babylon. I could be wrong on the Joel text. And the list goes on. Micah chapter 1, it's the same kind of imagery used about the fall of both Samaria and then later Jerusalem. And then the same thing in Zephaniah. The day of the Lord there is all about the fall of Jerusalem in 586 at the hand of the Babylonians. Here's my point. We've got to pick up those Old Testament references and look at the context to see what's being discussed. And it is a foolish, naive view that comes along in spite of the explicit remarks of the context and says, oh, I don't think Isaiah 13 is actually about that. It's actually about the end of time. Did you know that there are people who actually say that? Listen to this. There are some individuals, in spite of the explicit claims of the texts themselves, this is the burden of Babylon, this is the burden of Egypt, this is the burden of Edom. There are individuals who, reading those same texts, will come to those texts and say, oh, but this is actually about the end of time. Here's a question. If the texts had wanted to say this is not about the end of time, this is about a judgment upon the oppressor, whomever that may be, would we let the text say that? The point I'm saying is this. Some of us won't let the text, won't let the prophet, won't let John say what they're saying, even if they wanted to. Maybe we ought to do the right thing, humble ourselves, look at the context, be responsible readers, and recognize we ought to let the prophet or we ought to let the text say what it's saying. And I'm saying in Revelation 21, we've got a context that comes to the table before this, that if we've not picked up chapters 17, we've not picked up chapters 20, we have no business jumping into Revelation 21. And I know far too many people who want to come right to Revelation 21. They want to talk about heaven, and they have absolutely done no homework for the context. We've got to be better readers than that. Revelation, again, is one coherent, cohesive drama, and we mustn't splice at chapter 20 or 21 because we don't understand the language that's being picked up from the Old Testament prophets and we're not transposing it appropriately. That's what we need to take into consideration. Now, who's the oppressor then? I've argued from Revelation 13, I've argued from Revelation 17, I've argued from Revelation 18, especially when you connect all this with Daniel chapter 7, the four beasts, and the fourth is Rome. I'm saying that it's Rome, specifically in view, is the 8th Roman Emperor Domitian, who is leveling an oppression against the saints. So I've said some of that about the context and the historical background elsewhere. It's in the notes. Go back to the introduction, look at chapters 1 and following, and the whole study sets us up to read that this is the Roman oppression from Domitian against the saints. So we see a world that's blasted out of existence in chapter 20, 11 through 15. We see a new world, a new heavens and new earth, coming in chapter 21, verse 1. We need to ask this question. What does this picture in the drama mean? What does the picture in the drama mean? And this is not the first time I've told the students we need to ask that question. Yes, in Revelation 11, John sees a temple. We need to go beyond just saying he saw a temple. We need to say, what does it mean? Yes, John saw the 144,000. That's true. We need to ask the question, though, what does it mean? Yes, he sees a sea beast coming up out of the sea, and then he sees a land beast coming up out of the earth. We still need to ask, what does it mean? These images are trying to send us a big picture, and there's an oppressor, there's a villain in the book of Revelation that's over against the saints. We've got to ask the question, not just what did John see? He sees a new heavens and a new earth. We've got to ask now, what does that mean? And if we only stop at the literal level, we're no better than the millennialists who want to say all of this is literal and then they betray their hermeneutic. We're no better if we see figures only when we want to see figures. We need to ask about the whole big picture. What does it mean? Jim McGuigan is exactly right. Jim McGuigan is exactly right when he says we mustn't miss the forest for the trees. No, he didn't say that here. What did he say? He said we often see brushstrokes when we should be seeing entire portraits. Look, don't just look at Revelation like this. You need to step back and see the big picture. There's a big drama here, and it mustn't be spliced up. It's one big drama. It has one oppressor, one villain in view, and that is the consistent hermeneutic we ought to apply to the book. There's only one big deal going on here, and it's the conflict between God and Satan, which is happening down here between the saints and Rome. Okay, let's take a look at Revelation 21 then on number 2. How should we interpret the new heavens and new earth? There are about 4 ways that we could go with Revelation 21. Now, the most popular view today that's catching on, probably because of individuals like N.T. Wright. This was taught, by the way, by some of the older guys. So don't think that this is just a brand new thing. But the new view that's this view that's become more popularized now, I should say, that's really being popular and it's really catching on, especially with the kids, is the idea of a renovated earth. Now, don't take that last remark as an insult. I don't mean to say that it's only the young people that are buying into renovated earth. I can tell you a number of people who are far older than I am. And let me also say this. If the renovated earth view is right, okay, so I'm floating that out there, that needs to be teased out a little bit more. Is it possible that somehow heaven and earth do converge, as N.T. Wright pushes us to try to read? I'm not going to weigh in on that right here, but I will say this. If the view were right, I'm certain that it's not to be taught from texts like Revelation 21, 2 Peter 3, or Isaiah 65 and 66. If you're a really interested reader and you really like to be bored, you should buy my book, A New Heavens and a New Earth. You can find it on the website. But I've written about 300 pages on this. A lot of data there. It's a tough, slow read. But I'm saying this. If the renovated earth view is right, I'm certain that it's not taught from this text, Revelation 21. I'm also certain that 2 Peter 3 doesn't have it in view. I'm also certain that Isaiah 65 and 66 doesn't have it in view. But I'm saying this. A number of individuals think that it does. Now, let me tell you why this is a problem. And if you stayed with us in the study thus far, I'm really cutting against what I would call an allegorical view. A predictive allegorical view, where we've got to give every little thing in a drama or a vision or an oracle from a prophet an item for item correspondence. So we come to a text like Ezekiel 40 through 48, or we come to a text like Isaiah 65 and 66. And you have these pictures. Wolf lying down with the lamb. And we try to give those individual, isolated, allegorical significances. So we say, well, the lamb is actually Jesus. The lamb is symbolic of Jesus. And the wolf is actually symbolic of somebody like Paul who converts to Christianity, and the two lie down together. That's an allegorical view of this. And I'm certain the allegorical view is wrong. Somebody else might say, well, he sees a new heavens and a new earth, but that's a symbol for heaven, and we have to give it an item for item correspondence. I think we're missing how to read the picture. I think we're missing how to read the prophets. I don't think the prophets function, if they ever do. Daniel would probably be as close to as a predictive or an allegorical prophet as you're going to find. I think Daniel is predictive, by the way. Don't misunderstand. I think Isaiah has prediction. I think that the prophetic office has prediction as a possibility available to it. Don't misunderstand me. I think that God's able. I think he predicts things in advance. Look at 1 Kings 13, 1 and 2 on your own time. 200 years in advance, he talks about Josiah by name, the prophet does. I'm not one of those liberal critical guys. I don't deny biblical prediction, miraculous predictive prophecy. I am saying this, though. I think when we take that view and read the prophets or the book of Revelation in that view, we're going to hit a massive snag. Now, some individuals thinking that's the right way to read, where everything gets an allegorical correspondence, they come to texts like Isaiah 65 and 66, 2 Peter 3, and Revelation 21, and they start saying all of those three talk about heaven, end of time. All three of those texts talk about a new heavens and a new earth. Now think about this. I've said this, especially to the students. They've heard me too much on this, and I'm going to just belabor it one more time. You have about 3 ways you could go with this. Option number 1 is you could take these texts literally. You could try to take these texts, boy, that's not going to go, is it? Literally. The second option is you could take it figuratively. Now, we make a bad assumption. We assume that figuratively only has one possibility, which is allegory. That's not true. That's simply not true. Listen, the second way we could interpret this is allegorically, where everything gets an item for item correspondence. Now, the literalist would be that of like the millennialist, basically. Now, some of us pushing for a renovated earth have gone this way. We started saying that it says new heavens and new earth, and that's literal speech. We start talking about, now that's going to be a problem, by the way, and I'm going to critique it here in a second. The allegorical view is no better, because we're going to hit some snags. What do you do when it says there will be no death there? And then the same text talking about where there's no death goes on to say, and there will be people who die, but they're going to be older than 100 years age. That's Isaiah 65, by the way. I'm not making that up. No death there. There is death there, but it's going to be after the age 100. No matter what you ascribe death as being, allegorically, you've got a problem. You pick what death might be. Whatever you say it is, it says it's both there and it's not there. That would be, if you take it literally or allegorically, whatever you think death is, if it's literal, or if you take it as allegory, guess what? That's a contradiction. That's a problem. There's a third way we should read. What about this? The book of Revelation is going to say this in chapter 21 about the new heavens and new earth. It's going to say this. It's going to say no temple is in it. 21:22. How about that? I listened to one fellow. I won't mention his name because I'm on the internet and I'm live, but I would certainly mention it if I were in the classroom. Well, actually, I'm going to go ahead and mention it anyway. Dan Owen doesn't have a clue what he's talking about. In Revelation 21:22, it says there's no temple. He takes Ezekiel 40 through 48 and says that there's going to be this temple in the renovated earth. You can't have it both ways. You pick what the temple is, whether it's symbolic, allegorical, or if it's literal. And get this, you can't have it both ways. That's a contradiction, folks. That's a contradiction. We've got to find another way where the hermeneutic can be held consistently then. What about this one? No night there, it says. No night there. That's what 21:25 says. 21:25 of Revelation says there will be no night there. Then guess what? A number of individuals want to push us right back into Revelation chapter 7. Say it's also talking about the same situation, which most everybody says is heaven. And listen to this. In Revelation chapter 7, it says this. They will serve him day and night. 7:15 of Revelation. You pick what it's allegorical for. If it's literal, you've got a contradiction because one text, allegedly talking about heaven, says no night there, Revelation 21. Another text, allegedly about heaven, says they'll serve him day and night. What in the world? You've got a contradiction if you take a literal view. Well, it doesn't do any better to take an allegorical view because whatever you pick, night being, or whatever you pick the temple being symbolic of, if you give it an item for item correspondence, the text says both it will be there and it will not be there. That's a massive gaping problem for the hermeneutics here. I'm saying we need a third option, and I'm saying something like it is a collective picture where we shouldn't descend to brushstrokes but get the big picture. And so it wouldn't bother me a bit if we have two different images, and while they quote unquote contradict, they're driving at the same big picture or same big point. Another way I might word that is it's imaginative. We ought to read the text imaginatively. Did you know if you go back to Isaiah, we ought to read imaginatively? There you go. If you go back to Isaiah, listen to this. Everybody I've read says that Isaiah 11 is talking about the Messiah's kingdom. And everybody I've read says that Isaiah 35 is talking about the Messiah's kingdom. Isaiah gives us two different texts, Isaiah 11 and Isaiah 35, about the Messiah's kingdom. Everybody I've read, and I've read the millennialists, I've read the radical left-wingers, I've read the conservative, evangelical circle, I read widely. Everybody I've read on Isaiah 11 says this is a portrait from Isaiah about the Messiah's kingdom. Everybody says Isaiah 35 is the same thing. Now listen to this. In Isaiah 11, it says this in 6 and 7, the wolf and the lion will lie down with the lamb. The lion will be, let me read it. This is Isaiah 11, 6 and 7. The lion will be in the Messiah's kingdom, according to Isaiah 11. The picture, the portrait we get there. This is Isaiah 11 and verse 7. The lion will eat straw like the ox. This is 11:6. The young lion will lie down with the calf. According to Isaiah 11, the lion's going to be there. Young lions and lions. Now listen to this. In Isaiah 35, both texts now are supposed to be portraits about the Messiah's kingdom. Listen to this. This is 35:9. No lion will be there. If you take it literally, that's a contradiction. If you take it allegorically, that's a contradiction. But if you and I step out of the predictive, allegorical, literalist view, and we think for a second big picture, we recognize that Isaiah 11 with the lions lying down with the other animals, and Isaiah 35's text, no lion is there, are both driving at the same big picture or collective image. It's a point about peace. Now, I'm saying Revelation's doing the exact same thing, and I'm saying that neither 7 is about heaven. Revelation 7's not about heaven. It is an image in the drama, in the movie. I'm saying that Revelation 21 is not about heaven. It is an image. It is part of the drama. It's in the movie. John is seeing these images, but none of them are talking about end of time stuff. It's part of the movie. We've got to ask, what does it mean? And I'm saying when you read Revelation 7 and it says they serve him day and night in his temple, Revelation 7:15, and you later read this text, Revelation 21, that says no temple will be there, 21:22, no night will be there, 21:25, I'm saying it doesn't bother me a bit that those quote-unquote contradict, because the prophet John is taking an imaginative collective view as he's driving at the same big reality. The contradictions don't bother us. You got to stop reading literally, you've got to stop reading allegorically, and you've got to see big picture. Start seeing entire portraits rather than these minute brushstrokes. I'm not bothered by the contradictions in Isaiah at all. I'm not bothered by the contradictions in Revelation at all. But let me tell you this, with the renovated earth view, the minute you start taking all of these passages, Ezekiel 40 through 48, Isaiah 65, 66, Revelation 21, and you start insisting on either a literal view, which is the view of Dan Owen and a number of others, by the way, I might add, or you start insisting on an allegorical view, you've got problems. You've got massive exegetical problems. Now listen to this. You can't have Ezekiel 40 through 48 with a temple taken literally, as you also double down and say we ought to take Revelation 21 literally. Revelation 21 is the text saying no temple will be there. Ezekiel 40 through 48 has an elaborate picture of the temple. When people start reading Ezekiel 40 through 48 literally, my red flags go up, because I'm thinking my radar is on high. You've got an obvious contradiction between Ezekiel 40 through 48 and Revelation 21 if you take both literally. And Dan Owen does just that. Well, it's not just Dan Owen. It's the view of N.T. Wright. It's the view of a number of individuals. And listen to this, guys. Listen to this, and girls. In Isaiah 65 and 66, we're told that that's talking about heaven. We are told that Isaiah 65 and 66 is actually talking about heaven, but it's going to be on a renovated planet, a renovated earth. So this is about end of time material, we're told. Did you know that if you look at Isaiah, there's death going on there? Well, I'm not making this up. Let me show it to you. This is Isaiah 65. Hopefully you've got your Old Testament handy. Look at Isaiah 65. In Isaiah 65, it says this in verse 19, I will also rejoice in Jerusalem and be glad in my people, and there will no longer be heard in her the voice of weeping and the sound of crying. Now watch this. This is 65:20. No longer will there be an infant who lives only but a few days, or an old man who does not live out his days. For the youth will die. Oh, check that now. This is 65:20 of Isaiah. In the new heavens and the new earth, it says an old man will live out his days, and it says the youth will die at the age of 100. And then in 65:20 it says, and the one who does not reach the age of 100 will be thought accursed. I've got two questions off 65:20 if we take this as a literal presentation about end of time material. In Isaiah 65:20, one question is this: how did death get to be in the new heavens and the new earth? I have listened to these fellows explain Isaiah 65 and 66 as being end of time on a renovated earth at the end of time, and they also treat Revelation 21 the same way. That's a contradiction again. Isaiah 65:20 has death present, and Revelation 21:4 and 5 is the same text they go to say there's no death there. Ouch, that's a killer. Here's a second problem. How did the wicked get into the new heavens and the new earth? If you look at 65:20, it says there will be some people who die prior to 100, and if they do, they're going to be marked out as being the cursed ones, the wrongdoer, the wicked. And then there's this question I've got too. In Revelation 21:24, listen to this. You remember how I've pointed out that the nations, ta ethne, the nations in the book of Revelation are consistently the wicked, the enemy of God? Listen to this. In Revelation 21, which a number of individuals want us to read as end of time material, Revelation 21:24 says, oh, and by the way, the nations will walk by its light. 21:26 says they'll bring into it the glory and the honor of the nations. They are consistently the wicked in the book of Revelation. After the events of 20, which is the destruction of the oppressor's world, and then this new portrait of the new heavens and the new earth, in the aftermath, the nations wind up somehow being in the new heavens and the new earth. Here's a question. If Revelation 20 is the end of time, and we would have thought that Revelation 20 is all about the wicked being destroyed and they're sent to hell or judgment, which we read very literalistically, by the way, as the lake of fire, rather than just irrevocable judgment. We don't see that as just a portrait of judgment. We see it as hellfire. This is eternal punishment. This is eternal judgment. And we read it as eschatological material. I want to know how the nations ever, if they were supposed to have already been judged in chapter 20, how do they make it into the new heavens and the new earth in chapter 21? Boy, that's a killer. So here's what you've got. If you take the view of renovated earth from Revelation 21, everybody I know wants to see Revelation 21. Everybody that wants to read it, that is, everybody that I know who wants to see Revelation 21 as being about a renovated earth at the end of time, they all want to connect it up with texts like Isaiah 65 and 66, 2 Peter 3, many of them, but maybe not all, want to tie in Ezekiel 40 through 48, and I'm saying every single one of these things presents more and more and more difficulty. You've got more and more contradictions. Night or no night. Temple or no temple. Death or no death. And how did the wicked wind up there? I'm saying this. We've got to learn to read the prophets better than that. We're not being consistent here. Okay? Now all of that packs in pretty well what I've said here on number 2A. Get these last blanks down there at the bottom. All of that bulk right there in the middle says everything I just said. The biggest problem here is hermeneutical. Hermeneutical. It is a hermeneutical problem. You can't take a literal reading, which is what I've heard explicitly a number of these guys do. N.T. Wright, Randy Alcorn, Dan Owen, and the list goes on. You can't say that it's supposed to be read literally and then not face the difficulties. Okay? What was it? J.J.M. Roberts, professor of Old Testament at Princeton Theological, absolutely was right when he said, we will not be guilted for asking the hard questions. Sorry, but I'm not the bad guy here. Your view does not make sense. Okay, take a look at this then. If you take an allegorical view, you've still got to account for the difficulties. And I'm saying this, I haven't heard a serious treatment other than what I've read in McGuigan and a few others that are anywhere close to consistent. We need hermeneutical consistency. And I'm saying the minute you start to realize this is a big picture, this is a collective image, the contradictions aren't bothersome. Because they're not aiming at the mechanics. They're not aiming at the details. They're aiming at the big picture. And ultimately, they're saying the same thing. They're getting at the same thing. Big picture, peace. Big picture, the presence of God. Big temple there or no temple. They're both conveying the presence of God, you understand? That's the stuff I'm saying. And so, if you read the text consistently, you've got to have a hermeneutic that you're going to hold consistently. You cannot take an allegorical or a literal view of Revelation and then come to chapter 21 and expect not to have problems. You're going to have a massive problem. Okay, that's the first way you could try to take this as a renovated earth. And again, I'm not necessarily here saying that the renovated earth view is wrong. I am saying, however, if it's right, it's not to be read from these texts, which are in prophetic context, apocalyptic context, and are being applied, just as the Old Testament prophets are, over against the world of the oppressor, and not at once are they talking about the end of time in the prophets. Let me say that one more time. The Old Testament prophets, which is where this language comes from, and John expects us to recover it. Listen to this. The Old Testament prophets do not talk about the end of time and the end of planet. Okay? They don't talk about it. They don't talk about a second coming. Why is that? The second coming doesn't become a notion until after the first coming of the Messiah. The Old Testament is looking at the first coming of the Messiah. That's why the Jews, that's why the disciples even, are still looking at Christ and not thinking he's going to be killed. This idea of a second coming is not something that they had read out of the Old Testament. It's not there. The Old Testament deals with the first coming of the Messiah when it talks about him. And then these other apocalyptic contexts aren't talking about end of the planet, end of the world, end of time. They're talking about ends of nations. Now, I am saying this then, just to be extremely clear. I believe in my future there is a bodily resurrection, and I believe that on the presence of text, or on the premise of texts like 1 Corinthians 15, 1 and 2 Thessalonians. I believe in my future there will be a second coming, second personal and bodily coming of the Messiah. Not a judgment national coming, but a coming in judgment in person and with a body. I believe in the future resurrection, 1 Corinthians 15, 1 and 2 Thessalonians. I believe in the future second coming, 1 Corinthians 15, 23, 1 and 2 Thessalonians, Hebrews 9, 28. I believe in a future final day of judgment, John 6, Acts 17, 30 and 31. I believe in a future bodily coming of Christ, a future bodily resurrection, and a future, you might even say, bodily judgment, final and bodily judgment. But I don't think these texts are talking about that. Okay? For a number of reasons. These texts aren't talking about that. We've got to do good exegesis and to read Revelation 21 more like Pauline epistles than prophetic texts, in my estimation, is an egregious mistake. Okay, here's a second way you could try to see this. B. This is 2B. You could try to see this text as being about heaven. Just flatly just saying, I think new heavens, new earth is actually symbol for heaven. I would just simply say, is that what Isaiah is doing? What's Isaiah doing? Look, in Isaiah, listen to this. In the book of Isaiah, he talks to us about a number of old things. That's Isaiah 42, 9 and 10. That's Isaiah 43, 17 through 19. He talks to us about the old world of the oppressor. And the new is set over against that old world. Okay, so this is obviously not difficult to read. You've got the old, and it's set over against the new. But if you look at Isaiah chapter 42, 9 and 10, he's going to talk about new songs. He's going to talk about new things. He's going to talk about new names, Isaiah 62. That's a motif too, by the way. It's not a predictive allegory, okay? Isaiah 62 is not a literal prediction. It's not an allegorical prediction. It is part of Isaiah's world. He is imagining a new world that comes into play over against the old world of the oppressor. And that's Isaiah 65, 66. He talks about new worlds, new heavens and earths. Okay, look at this. The new world is the imagined world of Isaiah after the old world of the oppressor. Who's the oppressor? Assyria, Babylon. Assyria, Babylon. So if Isaiah, in the middle of the Assyrian Babylonian exile, is imagining a new world by which he presents these metaphors, these motifs, new things, new songs, new names, new heavens and earth, a new world. If he imagines this kind of thing, and he's not talking about heaven, but something after the oppression, what do you think John's doing in 21? Predictively or allegorically looking at heaven? He is doing the same thing, and he's expecting us to recover the Isaiah context. He is doing the same thing as Isaiah. Isaiah sees a post-oppression world, and John, looking at his own oppressor, sees a post-oppression world. To read Isaiah and think about heaven presents a number of difficulties, by the way. You've got people dying there, Isaiah 65:20, and you've got the wicked there, Isaiah 65:20. By the way, it also says he creates Jerusalem as a rejoicing, 65:16 and following. It doesn't say he creates Jerusalem. He creates her as it's a new state of affairs. It's after the oppression. More on that here in a second. So the individuals who come to Revelation 21 and say, well, I think it's talking about heaven. Is that what Isaiah was doing? I don't think so. I think if you look at Isaiah 65 and 66, in its context too, by the way, I weary of reading these individuals who do not read Isaiah 65 and 66 in context, but they're actually reading it in some radically other context. They're reading it outside of what Isaiah is actually working with in his own day. That doesn't make sense. No, it does not. I'm saying then to read it as heaven in Revelation 21 probably misses, since he's expecting us to draw from Isaiah. All right, the third way to read it is this. It's the church. The new heavens and the new earth represents the church. Now this gets closer to right, but I still don't think it's right. Now here's why. Individuals want to go to Isaiah 65 and 66, and they want to say, well, he's predicting the church. You've still got some of those same problems. The hermeneutical problem is the one I'm really trying to get you to think about. Can we read Isaiah 65 and 66 as a prediction or an allegory even for the church? I think we're going to hit some snags there. You're going to have problems. Now, Revelation 21, is it talking about the church? Yes, but I wouldn't just want to say it's talking about the church exhaustively in Revelation 21. It does say this in 21 too. It does say that she is the bride adorned for the husband. 21:2, the bride. It does say in Revelation 21:9 that I will show you the bride, the very wife of the Lamb. Now you say to me, that sounds like the church. Yes, it is the church, but it's saying a bit more than that. Listen to this. This is 2 Peter chapter 3. If the new heavens and the new earth is the church. Now somebody would possibly try to say to me, well, the new heavens and the new earth in 2 Peter 3 is not the church. It's actually heaven in 2 Peter 3. Okay, let's hold the brakes. In 2 Peter 3:13, listen to this. According to his promise, now that's the church. Peter's writing to the church now, isn't he? 2 Peter chapter 1, verses 1 and following? He is. He's writing to the church. Peter says, we are looking for new heavens and a new earth. The church is looking for a new heavens and a new earth. Now again, somebody could try to say, well, in Revelation 21, the new heavens and new earth is the church. In 2 Peter 3, the new heavens and new earth is heaven. We're really messing up badly, though, because now we've got Isaiah talking about the church, Isaiah 65, 66, and we're taking a predictive allegorical reading. And then we take John in Revelation to be talking about the church, which is already in existence. So how is he seeing her coming into existence after the Roman dominion? And then you've got 2 Peter 3 where the church, the church, are looking for a new heavens and new earth. So it's obviously not the church there. Listen, the church, it is the church in Revelation that's looking for the new heavens and the new earth. So it is in 2 Peter also. So it is the church. I'm saying that the new heavens and the new earth as a picture. If you see the movie and you see this new planet coming in, the church is looking for this new world. And it speaks, this is 2D now. It speaks of a new state of affairs. The new heavens and the new earth, a new world, is set over against the old one. The old state of affairs. The old state of affairs under the arrangement of the oppressor. So in Isaiah, it's the people of God by faith. They're not Christians. They're in Isaiah's day. They're 8th century BC, Judah. 8th century BC Israelites. The people in Isaiah, the people of God there, are not looking predictively at the New Testament church. They're not looking at heaven. They are looking after the world of the oppressor. The old world of the oppressor is pictured, Isaiah 13, Isaiah 34, as going out as a new heavens and a new earth comes in. It is a new state of affairs after the oppression. So, in the case of Isaiah, you have the oppressor. In the case of Isaiah, you have the oppressor, which is Assyria, Babylon. Isaiah sees the oppressor as Babylon. John is taking that same thing where the people look after Babylon's oppression and they imagine it as a new state of affairs. John, always, by the way, with messianic figures and portraits and terms. Okay. In Isaiah, I'm not shocked a bit by the messianic terminology that gets affiliated with the imagination of the people who are looking after Babylon's day. Okay, that's the way they would imagine a new day dawning. That's the way they would imagine a new world after the oppressor's world. So it is with John in Revelation. Doesn't John even call us back to Isaiah's model by saying it's the new Babylon? Revelation 14, Babylon is fallen. Revelation 18:2, Babylon is fallen. But now what John's doing, instead of seeing the historical Babylon, he's termed this new oppressor, Babylon, and he's talking about Rome. Isaiah, the people of Isaiah's day, are looking to a new world, a new state of affairs, a new mode of existence, peace after the oppressor, Babylon. John's doing the same thing with Rome. I'm one of those who thinks, and I've argued this in writing in my book, A New Heavens, New Earth, I think that the 2 Peter 3 text, the oppressor's Jerusalem. And I think that for about, if I remember correctly, like 9, 10, 11 reasons. And they're staunch, and I've argued my case exhaustively, I feel like. So I don't think we're right. I don't think we're close to on target when we say that it's talking about a new heavens and a new earth as a renovated earth. I don't think we're on target when we say it's talking about heaven. And I don't think we're on target when we say, well, it's talking about the church. In each case where this shows up, we are looking at a new state of affairs after the oppressor. And all of this terminology, guess where you could find it before John's day in Revelation or 2 Peter 3? You can find it in the Old Testament prophets. Now here's the problem. We are sold badly on a predictive allegorical reading. And it's got a mess affiliated with it. You'll never work out the hermeneutical inconsistency if you take that view. So, let me give you this. This is McGuigan. McGuigan brings up this song. He brings it up in Ezekiel. He brings it up maybe in his book on Revelation, maybe in his book on Isaiah. But McGuigan brings up this song, White Cliffs of Dover by Walter Kent. Now, Walter Kent gives us this song. There'll be bluebirds over the white cliffs of Dover. Tomorrow, just you wait and see. There'll be love and laughter and joy ever after. Tomorrow, when the world is free. The shepherd will tend to his sheep again, and Jimmy will sleep in his own little room again. There'll be bluebirds over the white cliffs of Dover. Tomorrow, just you wait and see. Now, if we prodded that song in a literal way, we'd have to take literalism. Everything there is just as it sits on the face of the thing. But we might do well to observe that Walter Kent is writing that in 1941. Walter Kent writes the song in 1941. Tomorrow the world will be free. Bluebirds over the white cliffs of Dover. Shepherd back to his sheep. Jimmy in his own little... maybe we should abandon the literal interpretation. Maybe Walter Kent's not really writing about the cliffs of Dover, the bluebirds. Maybe he's not really just writing about Jimmy in his room. Now, what a number of individuals want to do then, if we read Walter Kent as we would try to read the prophets, the Old Testament prophets, and Revelation, we'd come to this text and we'd say, oh, tomorrow. Well, he says tomorrow, but he means actually this date about 4 years out, 1945, Hitler's suicide, or maybe 1946 Nuremberg trials. Remember, 41. Walter Kent writes this song in 41. World War II is going on. The bombs are falling in London night after night after night. The allegorical reading would start saying, well, he says tomorrow, but he means Nuremberg trials or Hitler's suicide. That's a predictive allegorical reading. He says Jimmy will be in his own little room again. Now, Jimmy actually is a cryptogram for, and it's a euphemism. It's a code for this other boy named John or something. Or the shepherd will be at the sheep. Well, he actually means this. That's the allegorical reading. Now, the problem with that, with Walter Kent's song anyway, is if he writes this song in 1941, when the bombs are falling night after night after night, he's not thinking of a specific day on a calendar. He's not thinking of specific names. He is just thinking, right now we're in the oppressor's world, Nazi Germany. And he, imagining, looking beyond that, imagines the kind of day when after Hitler, the oppressor, the world is free. I think the prophets, Isaiah, Ezekiel, I think John in Revelation, do that exact same thing. They're not looking at specific dates and times, and we don't have to read them predictively, allegorically, that is. They're imagining, like Walter Kent, a kind of day after the oppressor when the world will just be free and right again. Walter Kent's not talking about end of time. He's not predicting, miraculously, he's not predicting. And I think the prophets, when they imagine the new world, they're just looking beyond the day of the oppressor to a kind of day. It's a new state of affairs. Okay, take a look at this. Number 3. I spend all my time there simply to say this. If you get that right, the hermeneutic, I think that a number of these other things fall into place. It becomes easier how we read this section. Okay, let's take a look at number 3 then. John does see a first world, a heavens and earth, as passed away. John sees a first world. He sees that in the movie, but we still got to ask, well, what does it mean? It's the oppressor's world. He sees it as passed away. We should put this down on number 3. The old Jerusalem had been used as a picture in the drama or vision of corruption. It's the old world, the old city, the old Jerusalem, used as a picture of corruption. Guess what? It's passed away. And then, put this on number 3, there's an obvious contrast then with the new Jerusalem used as a picture of victory. It's used as a picture of victory. And then there's this last blank on number 3. The city is said to be made ready as a bride. That's, by the way, taken out of Isaiah. Look at those Isaiah references in the workbook. It's talking about Isaiah. And if you pick that up, in Isaiah's context, it's the Assyrian-Babylonian affair, and he imagines God's people, even back before the New Testament church, as adorned as the bride. Isaiah 49:18, 61:10, 62:5. Okay, let's take a look at number 4. A voice then declares that the tabernacle, the dwelling of God, is with men. The point is about God's presence, his approval of his people. It's the big picture, it's the collective image stuff. So don't be bothered when 21:22 says no temple in it. And don't be shocked then when you have another text like Revelation 7, speaking of the same thing, the post-oppression of Rome. Don't be shocked when 7:15 says there is a temple in it. Both are saying the ultimate same thing, God's presence and approval of his people. Okay, take a look at this. Number 5. The voice in the drama or vision then declares that all things are new. The voice in the drama or the vision declares that all things are new. That's the same thing I just said about Isaiah a moment ago. And then if we stay with Isaiah's model, guess what? As he's working with the Assyrian-Babylonian problem, primarily Assyrian in this context, guess what? John builds on that same kind of thing and says Isaiah, in the Assyrian context, gives us a presentation after that crisis where there is no death, no mourning, no crying, no pain. And I've got some of the references there for you. Isaiah 25, Isaiah 30, Isaiah 65. Isaiah 25, 6 through 9 is where the no more tears is taken from. So it is also with Isaiah 30, verses 19 through 31. So it is also with Isaiah 65:20. All of those are in the context of the Assyrian-Babylonian exile. What Isaiah is doing is he's imagining a kind of day after the oppressor's world. When we come to this text in Revelation 21, 4 and 5, and we start reading that, and we say, well, this is talking about heaven. No death. There was death, by the way. There was death, by the way, in the new heavens, new earth of Isaiah 65. So maybe we ought to pump the brakes here and take a look at Isaiah 65 and how John's using it again. And we read this stuff in Revelation. This is heaven. This is end of time material. Listen, guys. Listen very carefully. The people arguing for that don't even know, as is my experience anyway, that this kind of stuff is taken out of the prophets. It will require more than surface reading, failing to uncover the Old Testament text to convince thoughtful men that maybe there's something else going on here. Okay? I'm saying that Revelation 21 is actually showing us a new post-oppression world contrasted with the former oppressive world under Domitian, the Roman emperor, who is a new Pharaoh, a new Nebuchadnezzar, a new Babylon, a new Egypt. Okay, take a look at this then. Number 5, death, mourning, crying, pain. Death, mourning, crying, pain. And then number 6, the one on the throne remarked that it is done. It is done. You pair that up with Revelation 16, 17. You've got the same deal in the Greek syntax. Same event. At the end of the Battle of Armageddon, which is in reference to Rome, the voice says, it is done. Guess what's being said here at 21:6? It is done. Guess what? They're both talking about the same thing. Revelation 17 through 22 are the gory details back onto the crisis of chapter 16. Revelation 17 through 22 is the obituary. It's the gory details back onto chapter 16's conflict. You don't have a conflict in 16, which is the Battle of Armageddon. Then you have the second conflict, which is end of time. That's not what's going on in Revelation. No, it is not. There is one conflict, and it's the conflict with Rome. And Revelation 17 through 22 is back onto that conflict in chapter 16. Okay, number 7. The blessings that were promised to the overcomers back in chapters 2 and 3, well, they're already pictured as experienced in the drama or vision in the victory over the oppressor. And here, those who are already sons of God are promised a new status or declaration of being in covenant with God in the vision or in the drama. A new status. Remember Abraham? He was called Abram, but then he was declared to be Abraham. Jacob became Israel. Boy, Israel sure beats being called deceiver. Jacob is what means deceiver. And the list goes on. It says something about a new status with God. Now, after the oppression, now this whole test that's been passed, and you've stayed faithful, you are already a son of God, but now God says, in a very similar way to Abraham or to Israel, he says, you are my son. You have been faithful. And that was actually one of the promises back in chapters 2 and 3. They'll get new names. That's picking up that kind of thing. It's not a literal predictive allegory, okay? It's the picture taken out of texts like those Old Testament texts, like Isaiah 62:2. The new name was a piece of furniture in Isaiah 62 after the oppression of the Assyrian-Babylonian deal. That's what John's doing here. Okay, number 8. In the drama or the vision, those who are wicked are promised, in contrast to the faithful, the wicked are promised to have their part in irrevocable judgment. I've said enough about the lake of fire. It's a picture in the rest. We mustn't do this, okay? We mustn't come to these texts in Revelation 21:8 and start saying this is a literal picture of hell. You've just bought into a literal hermeneutic. You've abandoned the visionary, dramatic movie-style presentation of the book. And you can't take that consistently the whole way through, you understand? In Revelation, there are 4 texts that talk about the second death. Revelation always is the only place that uses those 4 texts, the second death, and it equates it with the lake of fire, Revelation 20 and verse 14. It's a picture of judgment in this movie, in this drama, in this oracle. And in Revelation, the second death, the lake of fire, irrevocable judgment is still in the context. Now, the wicked in this context, guess what they're promised? Well, irrevocable judgment. Now, guess who the wicked are? 8a. They are the cowardly. That is, specifically, they fear the threats of the beast more than they trust the love of Christ. They've caved to the pressure. They are cowardly, the text says, rather than faithful. They are unbelieving, 8b. They abandon Christ because of pressure. They abandon Christ because of pressure. C, they are abominable. I'm told by the professionals that this calls attention to the work of the great harlot, 17:4. And there's some linguistic stuff, I suppose, going on there, is what I'm told anyway. She has a gold cup full of abominations. The harlot was the one with this abomination kind of thing. It's a tie right back into 17:4. They have abominable works, and they are involved in the unholy and detestable ritual of emperor worship, perhaps, is what the word is even pushing here. The context certainly bears that out. Whether or not there's a lexical connection, I trust the scholars on this stuff. I'm no Greek fellow. D, they are murderers. They are the allies of the beast who have shed the blood of the martyrs. The murderers are those who have shed the blood of the martyrs. That's Revelation 6, 9 through 11. That is Revelation 20, verse 4. If we stay with the whole cohesive, coherent drama, notice how all this stuff fits together real well? The book is tied together. It's one cohesive, coherent picture. And then E, immoral persons, sorcerers, idolaters. The wicked are those type. They engaged in the heathen and cultic worship. And I've got some of the references there for you. If you look at Revelation 2, Revelation 9, Revelation 14. They've engaged in the heathen and cultic worship. And then liars. They have denied the testimony of God, and instead of upholding the testimony of God, they've upheld the work of the false prophet and the beast. Okay, Revelation 21, 9 through 23. Revelation 21, 9 through 23. Let's go ahead and read that, and it's going to keep talking about this imagined new world after the oppressor's day. This is Revelation 21, 9. It says, Then one of the 7 angels who had the 7 bowls full of the 7 last plagues came and spoke with me, saying, Come here, I'll show you the bride, the wife of the Lamb. And in verse 10, he carried me away in the Spirit to a great and high mountain and showed me the holy city, Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God. Daniel 7:13. Having the glory of God. This is verse 11. Her brilliance was like a very costly stone, as a stone of crystal, clear jasper. Verse 12, it had a great and high wall with 12 gates, and at the gates 12 angels, and names were written on them, which are the names of the 12 tribes of the sons of Israel. Verse 13, there were 3 gates on the east, and 3 gates on the north, 3 gates on the south, 3 gates on the west. And verse 14 says, the wall of the city had 12 foundation stones, and on them were the 12 names of the 12 apostles of the Lamb. A lot of 12 here. Remember what we said about the number 12. Okay. Verse 15. The one who spoke with me, John says, had a gold measuring rod to measure the city and its gates and its wall. This is taken right out of Ezekiel, you know. By the way, the dimensions are going to be a bit different. So if you compare Ezekiel with Revelation, there's a problem too if you take a predictive, allegorical reading or if you take a literal reading. Not going to go. It's not going to go. Okay, take a look at verse 16. The city's laid out as a square. Its length is as great as the width. And he measured the city with the rod. 1,500 miles or 12,000 stadia. 12,000 is better here. 12,000 stadia picks up the 12 again. Its length and width and height are equal. Big old cube. And he measured its wall 72 yards according to human measurements. Or, instead of yards, probably 144 cubits. That would retain the 12 times 12. 144 cubits, which are also angelic measurements. Verse 18, the material of the wall was jasper. The city was pure gold, like clear glass. The foundation stones of the city wall were adorned with every kind of precious stone. The first foundation stone was jasper, the second sapphire, the third chalcedony, the fourth emerald. Verse 20, the fifth was sardonyx, the sixth sardius, the seventh chrysolite, the eighth beryl, the ninth topaz, the 10th chrysoprase, the 11th jacinth, and the 12th amethyst. Those are the foundation stones, 12 different styles. And then verse 21, and the 12 gates were 12 pearls. Each one of the gates was a single pearl. And the street of the city was pure gold, like transparent glass. I saw no temple in it. For the Lord God, the Almighty, and the Lamb are its temple. Work that business out. The imaginative, collective portrait, ideal image kind of thing. Stay with that. Stay with that. It'll make for much cleaner reading than all this contradictory mess. Number 23. And the city has no need of the sun or of the moon to shine on it, for the glory of God has illumined it, and its lamp is the Lamb. All right, let's go ahead and actually go through 27. We'll just finish out the chapter. The nations, the wicked, they walk by its light, and the kings of the earth will bring their glory into it. Future tense now. Will bring their glory into the new heavens and new earth and the city. How'd that happen? Well, it's after the oppression. John's looking beyond the oppressor to this new state of affairs after the Roman dominion, and he's imagining, now that the wicked world has been pictured as annihilated, blasted out of existence, the oppressor's world, pictured in 20:11 through 15 as being blasted out of existence, well, now a new state of affairs, pictured as a new heavens and new earth, has taken its place. And guess what? People who had once been faithless and sided with the beast, well, they're invited into this new state of affairs to be part of the covenantal people of God, the New Testament church. That's what the picture's getting at. I don't know how else the nations, the wicked, consistently the wicked throughout the book of Revelation, I don't know how else they would have gotten there. They walk by its light, they'll bring their glory into it. This is 21:25 of Revelation. In the daytime, for there will be no night there, its gates will never be closed. Compare that with 7:15 again. No temple, no night. 7:15 has both night and temple present. And both are about heaven? No. Both are about the post-oppression. But the collective, ideal, imaginative portrait accounts for the difficulties. The contradictions aren't problematic. They both are talking about this time of peace, the presence of God, new state of affairs after the oppression. Okay, take a look at 21:26. And they will bring the glory and the honor of the nations into it. So now we've got the nations again, the wicked, somehow winding up in the new state of affairs, the new heavens and new earth. And this is all end of time, so they get there somehow. Interesting. And you would have thought they would have been blasted out of existence back in 20:11 through 15 if that's end of time material, now wouldn't you? But then this is 21:27. And nothing unclean, and no one who practices abomination and lying shall ever come into it, but only those whose names are written in the Lamb's book of life. How about that? Okay, let's get these blanks. Number 9. In the drama or vision, the angel explicitly tells John that he is going to show him the bride, the wife of the Lamb. This is the church. It is the church in the new state of affairs. It is the church after the oppression. It's the church after the crisis. It's the church just like the people of God, Israelites, after they've left Egypt. It's like the people of God after they've come out of the exile, Assyria, Babylon. Now you've got the church, but it's the church in a new, redeemed state of affairs. All right, number 10. John is taken into a great and high mountain in order to see God's bringing down the holy city. The holy city. Number 10, the holy city. Number 11, the church is said to have the glory of God. Temple imagery, tabernacle imagery. The church is said to have the glory of God. This is after the crisis. Number 12, the collective image includes 12a, a great and high wall having 12 foundations. Just put 12 on all of these, A, B, C, D. 12 foundations. A, the names of the 12 apostles of the Lamb. B, 12 gates. C, 12 angels, which are guardians. That's taken out of Isaiah 62:6, by the way. 12 tribes, verse 12. The whole image, now get these last two asterisks on number 12. The whole image is taken from Ezekiel's temple, There's a bit of Isaiah that comes in here as well, by the way, but it's a collective picture taken from the prophets, applied here to the new state of affairs for the church, just as it had been about those in the exile. The whole image is taken from Ezekiel's temple, and then the number 12 signifies the covenantal aspect of things. 12 tribes, 12 apostles, covenantal aspect of things. Number 13, the angel that talked to John had a gold measuring rod. A gold measuring rod. That's taken out of Ezekiel. The picture stresses holiness and glory. Holiness and glory. The holiness of God and the glory of God. And you'd want to look at those Ezekiel texts especially for that. Number 14, the city is seen as being laid out like a square. The city is laid out like a square, but catch this. John's image is drawn from Ezekiel's, but is much larger. Much larger. And then the last blank on number 14, the city is seen as a cube, just like the Holy of Holies in Solomon's temple. It is a cube. Number 15, the walls are said to be measured at 144 cubits. The walls are measured at 144 cubits. There's a call for this picture of the city to be God's city in character. God's city in character. And then last blanks here on 15, the imagery of jasper and pure gold. Add to the imagery. Again, kind of picture you get out of other New Testament texts about the New Testament church. Number 16, the 12 foundations were embedded with every kind of precious stone. And then also on number 16, the 12 gates were 12 pearls. Isaiah's text says carbuncles. Look at it. Look at the Isaiah 54 reference sometime in your own time. Isaiah 54, 11 through 13. It's there in the workbook. But look at Isaiah 54. John's adapting that, but making it even better, even prettier. And then number 17, there is said to be no temple here, and I've made the argument about that ad nauseum. I know you guys are nauseous by this. And then also, if there had been a temple, I better not quote the guy who I got this point from. I'm not sure I'm quoting him appropriately. Like, I don't know if I've got the right guy. Well, I think it's G.K. Beale, but I'm not 100% sure. Okay? I think it's G.K. Beale that I got this point from, but I'm not 100% sure. He says that a temple in this situation would have indicated some amount of separation. Put the word separation on number 17. If there had been a temple in this picture, he says that's actually a connotation about separation. I think it's G.K. Beale, but I'm not sure. But I got that point from somebody. None of this, by the way, is original with me. You understand? I'm not that smart. Okay, number 18. Additionally, this city is seen as having no need for the sun or moon. The city is seen as having no need for the sun or moon. Same kind of picture that you get in Isaiah, by the way. Look at Isaiah 60, and you'll see that exact same kind of picture, but it's looking after the Assyrian-Babylonian context. We've got to start reading the prophets not just as predictors. They're poets. Their writing is creative. It's cosmic. It's beautiful. And when we take our Western flatness, literalism, and apply it to the prophets, and when we don't take literalism, we only know allegory, which is just about as valuable as literalism, by the way. None of this adds up. None of this makes sense. Isaiah 60 is not talking about end of time stuff. We don't need to think that God is actually the sun that illuminates everything. That's not the point. Stop thinking physically. Stop thinking literally. Stop thinking predictively and start thinking about the prophet who is the poet, and he is imagining a picture, a collective picture. And then there's this, number 19. The nations are somehow in this holy city. That's a real problem for those who see the section as discussing the final judgment and heaven. Put final judgment on the blanks on 19. That's a gaping problem for those who see the final judgment and heaven as being in chapters 20 and 21. And then John's broader portrait draws from Isaiah. You'd really want to look at Isaiah 60, where he imagines the same kind of picture after the Assyrian Babylonian exile. And then number 20, John continues to draw on Isaiah's text having open gates and everlasting light or glory. He draws on Isaiah's text. Open gates, everlasting light or glory. And then in idealism, just like the Old Testament prophets, John imagines an ideal scene where some of the wicked or the oppressors convert. They convert. And that's the same picture, by the way, back in Isaiah. He imagines the Gentiles or the pagans even grabbing at the Jews after the exile, saying, we know God's with you and we want to be part. That's also in Zechariah 8 and Zechariah... Well, it's Zechariah 8, 18 through 23. Zechariah 8, 18 through 23. There's another text. I think it's Zechariah again, but it's the same kind of picture there. The pagans grabbing at the skirt of the Jew. That's also in Isaiah 4. You remember that in Isaiah 4, the early part there? Isaiah 4, 1. Isaiah 4, 1. Anyway, the wicked convert. And then the last blank here on number 20, the city has no wickedness. It's an ideal portrait. John, the prophet, is imagining a new world after the oppressor's world is out of the way. And this is what the saints are going to be told. If you were a saint in the first century and this text comes to you, you're reading all of this, by the way, against the backdrop of what is the present crisis. Not hard for them to read it. It's harder for us to read it as Westerners who are so misguided with our hermeneutics, and we are so not historical, and we are so not poetic, and we're not good with literature. It is very easy, I think, for those in that day and time to read the Domitian persecution and say, we've got something like hope to hold on to. The oppressor's world will be taken out of the way, and God's going to usher in a new state of affairs. And if they knew Isaiah, as we should do better about knowing, by the way, this stuff gets easier to read in context. Okay, let's move into chapter 22. This is chapter 22, 1 through 5, which is still in connection with that same section, by the way. 22:1. He showed me a river of the water of life, clear as crystal, coming from the throne of God and of the Lamb. This is an Edenic picture. All of this is saying the same thing about a new state of affairs, but now he brings in Eden. So he's used Ezekiel's temple, he's used Isaiah's portraits, now he's using the Edenic scene where everything was ideal before the fall introduced. 22. River of the water of life, crystal clear, coming from the throne of God and from the Lamb, and it's in the middle of the street. On either side of the river, this is Ezekiel 47 where this image comes from, was the tree of life. So you've got multiple trees of life, bearing 12 kinds of fruit, yielding its fruit every month. And watch this. This is 22:2b. The leaves of the tree of life were for the healing of the nations. What's going on there? The healing of the nations. 22:3. In this picture, there will no longer be any curse introduced by the fall. That's the picture. And the throne of God and of the Lamb will be in it, and his bondservants will serve him. They will see his face, verse 4, and his name will be on their foreheads. And verse 5, there will no longer be any night, and they will have no need of the light of a lamp nor the light of the sun, because God will illumine them. We are really missing the point when we think that God is going to be this like cosmic orb that just puts off illumination. And they will reign forever and ever. It's the picture. You got to see the picture in the movie. And then we've got to ask now, having seen the picture with John, what does it mean? All right, we're still in connection with this new state of affairs. Let's get these blanks. John is using creation language, which is custom to the prophets, by the way. Isaiah 11, Isaiah 65, verse 25, Isaiah 65, 25. He is using creation language to speak of the new era, the renewed time of blessing, following and contrasted with that of the oppressor. New world, just like at the creation, over against the old world of the oppressor. That's the picture he uses. The prophet's picture. They did the same thing. The language is taken from Genesis. Put that on number 1. The language is taken from Genesis. All right, number 2. It says that there's the river of the water of life, the tree of life, and the tree of life bears fruit, and the leaves are pictured as being for the healing of the nations. There's medicine for the wicked. First of all, what are they doing in the new heavens and new earth situation? Second, why is there a picture of the nations needing healing from medicine coming off the fruit of the tree of life? We need to stick with a picture reading rather than an allegorical, predictive one, which at this point hits a mess. I listen to one preacher now. I won't say this fella's name because, well, I just won't say his name this time. But I heard the awfulest mess on Revelation 22, 1 through 5, read as a portrait of heaven, our heavenly home. What? When you look at 22, 1 through 5, and you read it that way, you've got a mess to deal with. Listen, guys, I'm pushing you on one thing in this class big time. Hermeneutical consistency. Okay? Now, if you need to hammer me and say, Drew, you're wrong, I don't mind that a bit. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. And the data's going to just eat my lunch. But wrong is wrong, and it's just, you can't be hermeneutically inconsistent and then somehow wind up being right on the text. You can understand now why this book, Revelation, which is thorny and difficult, you can understand why all of your false teachers come here, because they think it's a place where it's anybody's game. You can just start piecing stuff together and have no hermeneutical consistency, because as far as most people see it, nobody else is being hermeneutically consistent either. I listened to Dan Chambers and Ralph Gilmore have a spar on this topic at Harding. And Dan Chambers made the argument, I have documented this, by the way, in my book, but Dan Chambers ends up saying, I think pretty well everybody's agreed that Revelation 21 is straightforward, as he's arguing for a renovated earth with a literal reading. No, I don't think that. And Ralph Gilmore did call his hand on that. I don't think everybody thinks Revelation 21 is pretty straightforward. In fact, Ralph Gilmore did press him on the hermeneutical question and say, you don't just get to come to Revelation 21 and all of a sudden start reading literally or straightforwardly, to use his word, when you've not been doing that through chapter 20. Everybody agrees that up through chapter 20 we're in some kind of figurative reading. Then all of a sudden we hit 21 and it's all of a sudden, this is straightforward. This is about heaven. This is about renovated earth. I don't think that. I don't think that's even close to justifiable. Okay, take a look at this. Number 2 then, John imagines an ideal conversion after the oppression, in the new state of affairs, after the oppressor's world of Domitian is taken out, Assyria, Babylon is taken out, there's a new world, a new state of affairs pictured, and the wicked, who still literally, physically are alive, can be invited into it. I do think that's the point. Now, number 3, in the drama or the vision, there's said to be no more curse. How did the curse ever get into this picture? It's Genesis. That's the picture that's being picked up. It's Eden. And remember when the devil and then even man and woman were cursed. You remember that in Genesis 3, 17 through 19? Well, this is a picture reversing the fall. That's the picture that's being applied here to the oppressor and the oppressor's world. There's a no more curse. It's not about end of time. It's not, anyway, you know my view. All right, number 4. In this affair with Rome, God's throne or reign has been exalted or vindicated as he is central. The veil or shroud of the oppressor is imagined as removed. That's the picture taken about Assyria from Isaiah 8 or Isaiah 25. The shroud of the oppressor, the veil of the oppressor, is pictured as being removed. That's exactly what happens in Isaiah 25 and Isaiah 8. The prophet Isaiah imagines a day when the shroud or veil covering the whole land of darkness is taken away. Well, that's what's being talked about here in Revelation 22. The shroud or the veil of the oppressor is imagined as being removed. God's face is now going to be seen clearly. The oppressor's gone. That's the picture, by the way. That's the picture. And the saints belong to God, not Caesar, and they are wearing this new name. That was earlier in the book, chapter 2, verse 17, 3, verse 12. Here, they've got God's name on their foreheads. And then there is no night here. As imagined in the picture, in the movie, there's no night here. All right, let's hit the last of this. In chapter 22, 6 through 21. Let's go ahead and read the rest of it. This is 22:6. He said to me, these words are faithful and true. And the Lord, the God of the spirits of the prophets, sent his angel to show to his bondservants the things which must soon take place. And verse 7, and behold, I'm coming quickly. Blessed is he who heeds the words of the prophecy of this book. Verse 8, I, John, am the one who heard and saw these things, and when I heard and saw, I fell down to worship at the feet of the angel who showed me these things. He did that back in chapter 19, remember? Here he's doing it again. Verse 9, he said to me, don't do that. I'm a fellow servant of yours and of your brethren, the prophets, of those who heed the words of this book. Worship God. Verse 10, so he said to me, do not seal up the words of the prophecy of this book, for the time is near. How about that? Verse 11, let the one who does wrong. Some people won't even let that line sit. Immediately, John says it's near, and they start saying, no, it's not. Okay, 22:11. Let the one who does wrong still do wrong. The one who's filthy still be filthy. The one who is righteous still practice righteousness. The one who's holy still keep himself holy. All that says that there's a day of exposure that's coming. This is a word of assurance. 22:12. Behold, I'm coming quickly. Jesus says that a second time. He says it in 22:7, 22:12. He'll say it a third time in 22:20. And did he come quickly? Oh yeah, that's text. That's an image taken right out of the apocalyptic prophets. Isaiah 19:1, Micah 1:2 and 3, Psalm 29:10. The image of a coming in judgment, surfing in on the clouds, it's a picture of judgment over Egypt, Isaiah 19, Jerusalem and Samaria, Micah 1:2 and 3. Here, it's applied to Rome. He's going to bomb Rome right out of existence. The last lines of the book, I'm coming quickly, I'm coming quickly, I'm coming quickly, is Christ's word of assurance as he tells the saints who are still under the persecution and haven't actually witnessed the deliverance from the oppressor's world. Christ says, don't sweat it, saints. You be faithful unto death. I'll give you the crown of life. And that's a picture where he says, don't sweat it. I'm coming to bomb Rome out of existence here real soon. Domitian, where is he now? He's nowhere. Christ delivers the saints. They were faithful even to the point of death. They die in the Lord. They're blessed. Chapter 14 says, Christ 3 times is going to say, I know you're still under the gun right now. And Christ is going to say 3 times at the end of this letter, don't sweat it. I'm coming quickly. Any day now, I'm going to remove the oppression. You just be faithful. And he's saying the same thing to us. Now, he's not talking to us about Domitian, but he's talking to us about saying, you just be faithful. And whatever you're going through, one of these days it's going to be over. I'm coming quickly, and it'll all be over. He's not talking about second coming. He's not talking about end of time. It's a motif from the prophets. That's my point. Okay, 22, where were we? 22:12. And my reward is with me to render to every man according to what he's done. Verse 13, I'm the Alpha and the Omega, the first and the last, the beginning and the end. Verse 14, blessed are those who wash their robes so that they may have the right to the tree of life and may enter by the gates into the city. Verse 15, outside are the dogs and the sorcerers and the immoral persons and the murderers and the idolaters and everyone who loves and practices lying. Verse 16, I, Jesus, have sent my angel to testify to you these things for the churches. I am the root and the descendant of David, the bright morning star. Verse 17, the Spirit and the bride say, come. Let him who hears say, come. And let the one who is thirsty come. Let the one who wishes take the water of life without cost. The blessings of the book. He's saying, come on. And then, verse 18, I testify to everyone who hears the words of the prophecy of this book. If anyone adds to them, remember this is still in context, okay? God will add to him the plagues which are written in this book. Plagues is an Egypt word taken back out of chapters 8 and 9, chapter 16. And if anyone takes away from the words of the book of this prophecy, God will take away from his part, or take away his part from the tree of life and from the holy city, verse 19, which are written in this book. He who testifies to these things says, yes, I am coming quickly. I'll bomb Rome right out of existence. That's the metaphor of the prophets. Amen. Come, Lord Jesus. The grace of the Lord Jesus be with you all. Amen. Verse 21. Okay, let's get these blanks. Number 5, and then we'll close this out. Number 5, as he closes the apocalypse, he's reminded that the words of the revelation are faithful and true. Faithful and true. And this text closes off the inclusio that John's made around the book, noting the imminence of the events. So, in Rome's day in Domitian, these events were imminent, and John says as much. 22:6. These are the things which must soon take place. Number 6, the Lord is promised to come quickly. It's a prophetic remark. Now, I do think you want to do this. Go back, now that we're at the end of the book, go back to Revelation 1:7. Behold, he comes with clouds, and every eye will see him. They'll mourn that saw him because they pierced him. Go back to Revelation 1:7 and see if you think that that might be the prophetic motif applied to the fall of Rome. Everybody reads Revelation 1:7, everybody irresponsibly, by the way, reads Revelation 1:7 as second coming. But you've got 16:15, which is a judgment coming on Rome. That's right in the context of the Battle of Armageddon. You've got 22:7, 22:12, 22:20, and he says 3 times, I'm coming quickly. Give 1:7 another look. This is something you might brush up on for our discussion we're going to have. Look at James 5, 8 and 9. Coming of the Lord draws near. Probably a coming upon Jerusalem, judgment coming on Jerusalem. After all, he's writing to the 12 tribes scattered abroad. James 1:1. He's writing to people around the Jerusalem diaspora, he says. 1 Peter 4:7. All things, the end of all things is at hand. Probably fall of Jerusalem there. Again, I believe in a second coming in my future. I believe in a bodily resurrection in my future. I believe in a judgment day, a final day of judgment in my future. When the human drama comes to an end. But I think we really need to be cautious. When the text says something's at hand, it's nigh, it's quickly coming to pass, we need to honor those time statements, okay? I think that's the responsible way to read that. Okay, the last blank on 6, those who heed these words would be blessed. Number 7, John's action of attempting to worship the angel is probably just in the vision, in the drama, in the movie. If he made the same mistake twice, that'd shock me, I guess. It might be a symbolic deal just to remind again, don't worship Caesar, don't worship the beast, don't even worship an angel, even if the Caesars claim to be angels. Don't worship that mess. You worship God. And stay faithful to the holy text and how he directs us. Okay, number 8. Again, John's revelation is left unsealed. We've made this argument in the introduction. If you need more information on the argument, to pick up Daniel 8:26 in context and how he inverts the argument of Daniel 8, go back either to the introduction here, or you can, Introduction to Revelation, look at those worksheets, the introductory worksheets, or go back to Daniel 8:26. You can find the worksheets for that even on my webpage as well. Uncover Daniel 8, and you'll see the argument and how John inverts it. Because the time of fulfillment is near. Leave the revelation unsealed. The time of fulfillment is near. Number 9, the text echoes the Old Testament here. A day is coming when each is exposed for who he really is. Same kind of thing was said back in 13:10. A day is coming when each is exposed for who he really is. Number 10, in Christ's coming quickly judgment, or quickly coming judgment upon Rome, each would be given a reward according to what he has done. National judgment and final judgment are on the same basis, by the way, according to what a person has done. Now, if you are innocent then in a national judgment, you are not being punished by God. You might suffer the fallout, but you're not being punished. God doesn't punish the innocent. Deuteronomy 24:16, Ezekiel 3:18 through 22. And so in the case that you are innocent, you might suffer in a national judgment, but you're not being punished. In the case of final judgment, you won't receive suffering or punishment. It would be finality. And in both cases, though, a person is judged according to what he has done. Okay, number 11, Christ's claim emphasizes his divinity. That is verse 13. He's the Alpha and the Omega. You pick up the Isaiah 44 reference, 44:6, and he explicitly says, beside me there is no God. His claim emphasizes his divinity. Those who follow God, this is number 11, and the Lamb Lion are said to have washed robes. They have washed robes, verse 14, and they have the right to the tree of life. In the picture, they enter into the city, in the picture, in the movie, in the drama. Mustn't abandon the picture, the movie, the drama aspect of all this. Number 12, this is Christ's message or revelation. He's the victorious one. Number 13, the invitation is being extended after the Roman oppressive world is shattered. 22:18 and 19 is an invitation to those who were not with the Lamb Lion in the affair against the oppressor's world. He's saying still you have an opportunity to come in. If this is end of time stuff, 22:17 through 19 in the drama doesn't make sense at all. Okay? Okay. That invitation could not be extended after the, put this on 13, final judgment. But it's just like in Isaiah 60, it's a new state of affairs, it's after the oppression, and therefore people are still physically alive who are faithless, and they're invited in on the basis of faith or faithfulness. The saints in the crisis plea for Christ to come. And then number 14, both the plagues and the removal from the blessings that were pronounced back in chapters 2 and 3, by the way, to the 7 churches, they are blessed if you overcome. The plagues and the removal from blessings are pictures in the drama or the vision. If this is end of time material, I'd just simply say, how could you have your name blotted out of the Lamb's Book of Life if this is final stuff? Some of the ways that people read this book is strikingly bad. And then number 15, Christ promises to come quickly to handle Rome and Domitian. And did he? Boy, he sure did. He bombed her right out of existence. And that set up an implication for all of the other bestial empires and ways to approach life inappropriately, not as God would have us. Christ reminds us that to side with the empire, or to side with the beast, or to side with the oppressor is certain judgment. There's no success there, no matter how tempting it might be to conform to pressures, pleasures, powers. The book of Revelation teaches us about an era of fulfillment. It's all about the Roman oppression against God's people. And the message is, be faithful to find real victory. Now, we ought to be able to look at that fulfilled text, lift it up out of its context, move it forward a few thousand years, drop it into our own laps, and make timeless application. The same message that was fulfilled in Rome is equally as applicable, difference between fulfillment and application, to us today. Don't side with the powers. Don't side with pleasure. Don't side with pressures. Side with God. And the book of Revelation tells us, if it tells us anything, just be faithful, and that's where you'll find real victory. So, I think we ought to read Revelation as a very applicable text. It speaks about Rome's fall because of pressure, because of power, because of pleasure, because of pride, and it tells us to abstain from all of that and that entire entrenching way of life, and instead get out of the trenches, side with God, and be faithful. That's what the book of Revelation teaches. And 21 and 22 gives us this picture of hope that if you are faithful, this is the kind of thing that God's got waiting for you. Thanks for tuning in for Revelation 21 and 22. It's been good to have you in class this quarter if you've taken the class, and hopefully you've learned some things. Hopefully you're better equipped to read Revelation responsibly and maybe even navigate some of those steps along the way. Thanks for being here. Until next time, may God richly bless you always to his glory.